prior to that, I actually went to a birthday party celebration for Michael, and I had the book with me, and we did it in Manhattan, in New York City, and I can't tell you, there were a lot of fans there, a lot of people at that party. And I remember thinking, how strange it is that we're all having a party for Michael Jackson, and he's not here. And it was just a phenomenon to me to see how many people were there with, you know, whether they were impersonators, whether they were just fans, they were just dancing, his music was going. There were people, artists of every type who were there at this event, and I was there, and I don't think people realized the value of my book at the time. I mean, yes, they liked it, and they bought it, but it wasn't until he died that people suddenly understood really the value of the book, and suddenly the book became, in demand, and to the point that I couldn't even fulfill the demand. And so here we are, years later, celebrating Michael's birthday as a community of people who realize how significant this person was and is in many people's lives, and always will be. So I just think it's a phenomenon that continues. I mean, Michael is bigger than anybody that I can think of in the entertainment world, period.
Yes.
And, I think that's why we're having this celebration today.
Yes, I agree. Matt, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Aphrodite. Michael Jackson's life, everything about him was a phenomenon. It was like a show. And that's the reason why people are so, like why the fan base is so big, even after all this time and after all these allegations and after all these rumors and all these lies. There are people who will believe and people who won't, but he remains so big because people are drawn into him. They love him for, not just being an artist, because he's not just an artist. He was an amazing person. He was a humanitarian. He was a philanthropist. He loved and respected all of his fans. He took talent and inspiration from so many other talented people from, back in the years, like, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, James Brown, Bill Bailey, Cab Calloway, Jeffrey Daniels, He was always just so versatile, and, the whole world was so drawn into him, and his music was so timeless. Like, even today, you can listen to Off the Wall, and it still sounds like it's new. So it's like a legacy that can't die no matter what people try and throw at him. And people have been trying to throw things at him for over 30 years, and they can't do it. I mean, there have been a lot of people who believe it after some time, but they don't want to do the research. You have all these liars. You got Chandler, you've got Arvizo, you've got now Robson, you've got now Safechuck. And it's ridiculous, because if you actually look into their stories, like what they're claiming, you can read through the lies so easily. The whole thing was really, as far as I'm concerned, it was very pre-planned. They had the same lawyer, almost the same claims, the same case. Every time there's an article released online about Wade or Jimmy, they're released pretty much on the same day, primarily by RadarOnline.com, which I'm not going to get into that website, but we can pretty much tell they're lying on that. And I've noticed that a lot of people, fans or not, are actually starting to not believe the newer allegations from Wade and Jimmy. And I think it's because people are like, you know what, he's innocent, it's time to get past this and move on. And that's actually what I'm liking most now, is that people are starting to actually, even people who didn't like him before, are actually starting to open up their hearts and realize the actual truth now. And people like you, people like Aphrodite, people like Tom, are always going to be there to show the truth, no matter how much BS comes out. And it's amazing that this timeless, amazing man will be loved, hopefully, till the end of time. That's how I really see this.
Well, I do think he'll be loved till the end of time, but I will also chime in and say that there is still, I find the phenomenon of people who I get to know personally, who know my work, but maybe have not read that particular book that I wrote, that read it and say, I can't believe, I didn't know this about Michael Jackson, whatever color they are and whatever creed they are, that, and I'm assuming that they really know, or they realize, or they know me, they know my work, that they would be aware of it. And the truth is, like you were saying, people don't take time to do 10 minutes of research. We're all living in a world where everybody is so busy trying to just make a living, trying to get by, trying to keep up with this crazy pace that we've gotten into in our our current time, that it just seems like, no one has the time to do research, and people unfortunately continue to draw their conclusions from whatever it was that they know from the past, whatever allegations or media rag covers that they have seen in their past. Many people just stay with them. It just stays with them, and they don't bother, and that's why I say I really wrote the book for people who are not his fans, because I knew at the trial that his fans truly believed that he was innocent and that he was facing trumped-up charges. I just thought his fans were crazy back then when I was actually part of the media. I didn't know until I did my own research and went into it and reevaluated everything that his fans actually were the ones who were right, and that the rest of the world was, basically looking to make a lot of money off of sensationalizing something that could tear down the biggest celebrity on earth. And
well, let me just say something to Aphrodite. We were talking to Tom Mesereau earlier, and we were talking about Diane Diamond and Stacey Brown, who wrote recently something about the New York Post. I want to start with you, Aphrodite. What do you think of Stacey Brown writing 5 years later, almost to the date, that Michael Jackson did all these horrible things, and he got it from so-called maids or something like that? And why would you write an article 5 years later? And, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I met Stacey Brown in the trial. I actually spent some time with him. I also read the book that he wrote back then, which he was peddling at the trial, which I thought was, how do I put it? Inappropriate, perhaps, opportunistic. And I also found... Sorry?
Very bad. Stacey Brown, very bad reporter. I just want to throw that in there.
Well,
very poor.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I don't. I hate to besmirch somebody else who's in the industry that I'm in, but I won't disagree with you on that. I will also say that there were other people who I was checking sources with about him, because I was questioning where he was getting his material from, where he was getting his information from, and frankly, what I was able to determine was that his sources were questionable at best, and that he was, kind of reaching to even make it seem as if he was in Michael's fold, which apparently he was not. So, I mean, this is now, kind of things that I learned off the record, but between that and the actual book that I saw, which to me looked more like a pamphlet than a book, not a pamphlet, but just not a substantially even in length book. I found it to be, again, very opportunistic that he would peddle this around to the media while the trial was going on, in the hopes that somebody in the media would take it and run with it so that he could get a bestseller out of it. That's what I guess he was doing. I don't know what other reason someone would do that for. Talking to Michael's maids, I also interviewed Michael's maids, okay? I did my homework and decided not to include even my thoughts about those interviews in anything I've ever talked about. Because frankly, the one in particular that I'm not going to name, all she wanted was money, 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 money. And that's what she made clear to me in our meeting at a Starbucks. So I thought, you know what? I can't go down this road of, if people are doing something because they truly care about the truth, then they truly care about the truth. And people, most authors do not make very much money from writing books. I don't know if anybody out there understands that. There are maybe 24 writers in the world that are Stephen King status, and everybody else has to have, quote, a real job, because books don't bring you a whole lot of money. There's not a whole lot of, J.K. Rowling's or anything close to it in the planet. And so, most people write books, especially nonfiction books, because they have a story to tell. They have some reason that they want something known. And I did that 7 years ago and have never wavered from what I wrote or what I said. I didn't wait until 5 years later to start changing stories or switching stories or coming up with new information or throwing stuff around. It's just, I don't understand that at all. I just think it's, how do I put it? I can't even say the words in bad taste, because that doesn't really get you what, it's not the, it's.
Can I please chime in about the whole 5-year thing?
Sure.
Okay. I hear a lot of people bringing up, well, why is it happening after Michael's death? Why 5 years later? It's not uncommon for sex abuse victims to come out 15, 20 years later. This is actually a fact. We all have to look at the exact facts from their own story. And I mean, the Michael Jackson, the anti-Michael Jackson people or haters, they are actually aware themselves that sex abuse victims take many years to come out. And having, being kind of like manipulated by your abuser is actually very common. But the way to figure out that these people are lying, like Wade and Jimmy, is based on facts about their own stories, not just because it's 5 years. Why 5 years and not 4, 3, 2, 1? Well, it's just when they decide. For example, with Jimmy, it could be because it was a week after Escape was released. Or with Wade, it could be because it was 2 weeks after the MJ1 show. Timing can work in that regard, but we all have to focus on the facts. I just want to say that. It's not just that it's 5 years
I agree with you. I wasn't actually referring to the accusers. I was answering the question about Stacey Brown writing this article 5 years later. And why he would choose to do this now, I don't know. As far as the accusers coming out, whenever they've come out, they didn't only come out now. Wade Robeson came out, wasn't it a year or two ago already now that he started with his allegations? I mean, this isn't new with him. And, none of these allegations are particularly new. They've been floating around for years.
He claims to have had a breakdown 2 years ago and all this stuff. But if you look at the actual timing of it, it was like a week or two after, or maybe before, if I can correct myself here, before the MJ1 show that he wanted to be on and then was denied for. So, I mean, if that's not like,
I know that. But that was years ago.
Well, that article was interesting to me. I mean, I found it funny, like I said. But the thing is, Michael Jackson was messy and unorganized. There's pictures of his house all over the internet. So I mean, it's true that he had like a messy closet, messy bedroom, etc. But that doesn't mean that he went to the bathroom on his floor. And the thing is, if that was true, you'd think that at least one of those pictures of his house would show feces or urine on his floor anywhere in the house.
That's so ridiculous. He had his children there. We saw images of his entire house that was shown for quite a long time that the detectives had taken video of when they did the raid on Neverland, and nowhere and anywhere in all the images that we saw in court of that house, and that went on for quite some time, like I would say 45 minutes worth of recording, was there anything that resembled that kind of mess or behavior or filth. It just didn't exist in his house. He had a house full of people he had staff, I don't know how many staff. I think he employed 50 people on Neverland. Not, cleaning it, keeping the grounds, doing all of that. That's just insane. But again, this is where people like to do mudslinging after the fact. For what reason? So that their name could be bantered around, which is, I guess, they're getting their wish, because we are talking for some reason about Stacey Brown, who I don't feel has any true credentials, frankly. That's my opinion.
Tom Mesereau quoted it saying he doesn't consider Stacey Brown a real journalist, to quote him.
Yeah, well, I happen to agree. For every fan there is who loves Michael Jackson, there seems to be somebody out there with doubts and questions and, just mudslinging and haters, whatever you want to call it. It is odd to me that Michael is still a polarizing figure in the world. I don't know why people want to hold on to, like I say, the negativity that haunted him in his life when he is now gone and has left a legacy of fantastic music and dance and, as you say, philanthropy and goodness and concern about the planet. And to me, his ultimate message, toward the end of his life was the Earth song and caring about the Earth and caring about us healing the Earth. And to me, that was one of the most important messages he ever gave.